Hello and welcome to the World Wanderers podcast, your source for travel stories, travel destinations, and travel philosophy.
I'm Amanda.
I'm Ryan.
And we're your hosts. This episode of the podcast is brought to you by italki.com. For those of you who haven't heard of italki before, it's a fun, fast, and effective way to learn a language.
Yeah, it's actually a language learning platform, so learners and teachers from all over the world sign up and then link up to learn languages. You can find someone that's within your price range, who specializes in the things you want to learn, or even speaks the local dialect you want to learn. If you're learning Spanish, you can find someone from Argentina if you're going to Buenos Aires. See, I learned that on italki.
If you want to get started today, we've got a special promo going on, and it's promos.com.
It's promos.italki.com/The
World Wanderers. And you get your second lesson free after you sign up for your first. So get started today.
The World Wanderers podcast is also funded by fans. If you like the show and the ideas we're spreading, you can go to patreon.com/The World Wanderers, support the show, and get some cool bonuses in return. So go to patreon.com/The World Wanderers and check it out.
Thanks in advance for supporting the show.
What's up, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the World Wanderers podcast. Today on the show, we are very excited to bring you Brandon and Ann, tongue twister, from the YogaNomads.com. How did we get connected with these Yoga Nomads?
Great question, Ryan. I actually found the Yoga Nomads when I was searching for people to be guests on my other podcast on the business of yoga called MBO. And they happened to come up on my Facebook news feed through a promoted ad through somebody that they had interviewed for their blog. And I checked them out and was immediately attracted to what they do. They're traveling yoga teachers originally from Minneapolis, Minnesota, and they've been traveling the world on and off for the last couple of years, just with stopovers back in the U.S. And I reached out to them. We had an amazing conversation about yoga, the business of yoga, marketing, all of that sort of stuff. And I realized how aligned we are in travel as well, because I talked to them from Costa Rica at that point, and they've been traveling the world. They have the same goals and lifestyle as Ryan and I was like, yes, you need to come on the World Wanderers. So thankfully they said yes. And so we've got them here today to talk about travel, being traveling yoga teachers, how travel has changed their lives, and what's in store for the Yoga Nomads as a business.
Yeah, and they also touch on their story feeling discontent in their corporate jobs after college, and then how they ended up flying over to India and then eventually Asia, and also how they were able to incorporate teaching yoga and continuing to make money while they were exploring the world.
Enjoy. Well, thanks so much for coming on the podcast today, guys. It's super cool to have you here. And
Thanks,
yeah, of course. And last time I talked to you guys for MBO, you guys were in Costa Rica, and now you're home in Minneapolis, correct?
Yes.
Very cool. What's it like to go from being in Costa Rica, traveling around, to being back in like your home city?
It's a weird transition. It's significantly colder in the Midwest, of course, but we planned it around coming home for summer. So summer in Minneapolis or the Midwest is pretty great. So we're just jumping right in the flow of our friends and family and getting out on the bike and getting on the lake. And, we miss our life back in Costa Rica, though, I would say.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. We've had, our typical waves of up and down with the transition of coming home after being on the road for a while. And I think the most difficult part of this transition was we were in Costa Rica for 4 months, and that's the longest amount of time we've spent in one place since we've been traveling in 2014, or since we started traveling in 2014. So, building a community there and having to say goodbye to all of our friends and people who were like family to us was really difficult. However, coming home, you're welcomed with open arms from friends and family here. So that helps make the transition coming home easier. But it was a difficult one to leave for sure.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. It's something that we've talked about before. Like coming home from a big trip can just be, it kind of like, I don't know, turns your world upside down.
It does. Yeah. You experience that reverse culture shock, I think, even more significantly the very first time you leave the country. Maybe that's in your teens or early 20s. But you experience different layers of that the older you get and the more you travel and come home.
Mm-hmm.
So there's still an element of reverse culture shock. However, I think there's more depth to it, and you start to notice the subtleties of maybe it's politically or just on a local basis, things that happen at home that are vastly different from where you just came from or whatever. So it's trying to integrate what you've learned from the road to, your life, quote unquote, back home.
Yeah, that's definitely something I've noticed as well. It's like you go somewhere that's so different from where you're from, and then you come back and you notice these things that you never noticed before because it was so normal before.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Yeah, so we wanted to start off kind of like right at the beginning of your travel story. So before you guys were the Yoga Nomads, what was life like in Minnesota?
For sure.
Mm-hmm.
Should we start when we met?
Yeah.
So 2010, I graduated college and I started working at Oracle selling software. And when I joined Oracle, Anne was in my training class. So we got to know each other right away. We were kind of put into a little breakout session for the first week, run around the office, get to know this guy, give a presentation on that, etc. And we were just stuck in a little breakout room, like a little tiny conference room, talking about travel instead of doing our work homework. And we had a long conversation about it, went well, and then we just slowly turned that into dating over like the next 6 months, where I'd try and hang out with Anne and ask her all the time, and she would shut me down. So
finally, he reeled me in with guacamole and wine.
Oh my God, we are definitely soul sisters.
We are. I know we are.
Amanda's a guacamole addict.
It's like the clearest path to my heart, guacamole.
Yep. Especially avocados.
Yeah. People are like, what's your favorite food? I'm like, like avocado, guacamole. They're like, that's not a favorite food. I was like, but it is a favorite food. It's my favorite food.
Let's move to Mexico.
Yeah, exactly.
But I'm not kidding.
We're down.
Let's see. So we spent about 3 or 4 years there working, or I did, and left and did various sales jobs. And just kind of a slow building of, okay, this isn't what we want our life to be like, and it's time to make a change. So there's a number of factors that went into that. Anne lost her job. I kind of saw what my next role was going to be. I was kind of groomed for a promotion, and meeting with those people, I realized I don't want to be those people. Deeply unhappy. All they care about is money, kind of stereotypical salesy business people. And at the same time I was experiencing that, I was going through a yoga teacher training. So I had the juxtaposition of my happy yoga friends who were doing all kinds of weird things in life. And I would leave those meetings pumped up and feeling good and motivated. And then I'd go to work and I would leave that kind of stressed, frustrated, burnt out, etc. So it kind of gave me the courage to say, maybe I don't need to pursue a business career for the rest of my life, which was a challenge for me because my whole life, that's what I thought I was going to be. My identity was connected to that very intimately. So I had to go through a period of, shedding a previous identity and being open to something in the future. And then Anne lost her job. Maybe you can talk about that, but that was the ultimate catalyst.
Yeah, for sure. And watching him transform, like entirely transform from his experience with yoga teacher training really opened up my eyes to that possibility within myself. So I followed in his footsteps. He was a huge inspiration, not only for teacher training, but my entire yoga practice and the beginning of my yoga practice, all started because of him. And so I followed along and did yoga teacher training just after he did. And like he said, I lost my job weeks after I graduated from the program. And it wasn't the first or second time, it was the third time in a row that I lost my job. So I really sat back and reflected on that and was like, okay, the first 2 times I was in a pretty dark place, really unconfident, like what is going on? Why am I not good enough for this? And then by the third time and going through that transformational journey of teacher training, I realized it wasn't me that wasn't right. It was the job that wasn't right. So, just sitting back and reflecting on that and discussing it with Brandon and, talking about our future plans and what we wanted to do with our lives, we ordered a pizza, drank some beer, and started the Yoga Nomads blog. And shortly after that, bought a one-way ticket to India. So, I think it was, for me, the catalyst was losing my job. For him, it was, that combination of going to corporate America at the same time going through this transformational experience and then coming together and saying, what's best for us right now? Yeah. And that's where it all began. So then the next 6 months after I lost my job, we planned like crazy and saved and sacrificed a lot of things to make that our reality.
Yeah. So in terms of making such a big life change, what were reactions from your friends and family?
Mostly good. I say my parents kind of know I'm stubborn. If I want something, I try and find a way to make it happen. So they're, do it right. They trust me, making sure that the big things are in place. And it was easy. The friends, I would say my close friends, all very supportive. Kind of the second tier, third tier friends, like your work acquaintances, your college friends that you don't really keep up with. They don't understand, or many of them didn't understand. Mm-hmm. So they're like, why are you throwing away your life? Why are you, good here. You have some things going. You're living the dream. You're an idiot kind of thing. But I never really let that bother me because if that's their opinion, we're not going to see eye to eye on this anyways. So it was kind of like a shedding of people in my life, truly, that don't understand or don't want to understand. Actually, I haven't really explored that too much until you just asked that question about kind of shedding.
Yeah, it's something that we've experienced, which is why, you guys are so similar to us in the life course that you've taken and what you want out of life, which is amazing. But and we've talked to lots of people on the podcast as well who experienced this, I made this big dramatic change, and people were sort of like, what the hell is going on?
Definitely. Yeah, I would echo the same sentiments. For the reactions from my friends and family were quite similar. I think the people who truly and genuinely care about me would support me no matter what decision I made. And the ones who perhaps just don't understand me on a deeper level just didn't understand the decision. And really why and what we were going to gain from it. So, yeah, it does. It sheds light on, okay, so certain people are really going to understand it and get it, and then certain people don't. And it doesn't mean that you still can't be friends with the people who don't understand it. It's maybe just bringing light to a subject that they're unfamiliar with, or a lifestyle that they're unfamiliar with, which is fun because it's just promoting, this type of dream lifestyle, if you will. But yeah, then I think it also gives room and space for people to come into your life who really do understand and accept that, like you guys, or, people you meet on the road that seem so inspirational because they're doing the exact same thing.
Yeah, we've had that quite a bit where people who were maybe close friends through college and immediately afterwards have kind of faded away. But then people who are more like acquaintances who have followed a similar life course, we've kind of reconnected with. And they become much closer friends than they were before. So it's kind of an interesting experience with that.
Definitely. And I think tying it back to coming home, if we just go right back in the mix and we're surrounded by typical American culture, everyone has a job, they work 9 to 5, they have their 2 weeks vacation, that kind of narrative, we kind of feel alienated sometimes or demotivated to pursue our entrepreneurial goals, unless we surround ourselves with more people who are on a similar path.
Yeah.
So we've gone to meetups and entrepreneurial things and travel things and made sure to set up a weekly tea or a lunch date with our friends that are on similar paths. And that all of a sudden makes everything feel better.
Yeah. I love that. It's it's nice to know that you're not crazy, I guess. When you surround yourself with people who are doing something that you used to do, and then you're like, should I have quit this? Should I have left my corporate job? Did I do something wrong? Is this not having vacation time anymore thing a little bit crazy?
Definitely.
It's easy to doubt yourself.
So what was the plan when you guys first set out? How long were you planning on traveling for? Was it always about trying to teach yoga as you traveled? What were you imagining your trip being about?
So we got to tell a funny story of how we ended up in India. We originally planned on traveling through Central or South America, and every city we went to, we had a free place to stay, and we would offer yoga to the guests for donations. So we planned out about 6 months, did a lot of kind of business development, prospecting type work, and we were ready to go. And then we got lunch with another travel blogging couple, and at the end of this lunch, we decided we were not going to Central America or South America, and we were going to Asia. So we're sitting in the car, in my Jeep, I think, in her parking lot after this lunch, kind of freaking out. Like, what are we doing with our lives? You know, we're pulled to India, we're pulled to Asia, and we just sat there very emotionally for maybe an hour, 45 minutes, and then we went inside and bought a ticket to India. We threw away our last 2 months of planning.
And I think the excitement around India and Southeast Asia it just made our decision that much easier. South America, I don't know, I felt some resistance to it for whatever reason. But as soon as the idea of India and Southeast Asia came into our head, it was like, no, this is it. We got to do this. We were so excited.
What
and India is
the difference? What was it about India and Asia that seemed more alluring?
Well, they really painted a beautiful picture. So this is another local travel blog couple. They bought a one-way ticket expecting to be gone for 6 months and made it around the world in 3 years.
Wow.
And recently returned and actually are like in grad school and just had a baby and all that. But nonetheless, their excitement over Asia and just letting us know that our dollar would go way further and we could be on the road much longer. Mm-hmm. And we didn't have a timeline in mind even when we left. That was more appealing to us.
And the food. We're big foodies. That's like half of why we travel, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. Same for us.
And it was a challenge too. South America felt easier. Anne speaks Spanish well. I speak it okay. She's been there already for a few months. But when you talk about India and Asia, it's just a vast unknown.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. There's more of that like excitement because it feels like an adventure.
Totally. Yeah.
And so what was it like landing in India? Like India is just like a whole different world from the United States.
Well, let's talk about Manny.
Yeah. We got a $440 one-way flight from Chicago, which is kind of cool. People think that it's too expensive, whatever. $440, that's nothing.
That's pretty cheap.
Yeah. We show up at maybe 1 a.m, and a 70-year-old guy named Manny, who runs an Airbnb out of his house, he has this little cardboard sign with our name on it. Just all smiles. And he drove us home, and we were kind of just excited, so not even tired, even though we didn't sleep for the last 20 hours. And I don't really have strong memories besides that.
I mean, we were inside a car did he have a driver or was he driving us?
No, he had a driver.
He had a driver. We were in a tuk-tuk right away. 2 a.m, and we're driving through the chaotic streets of Mumbai thinking like it could be 2 p.m. or 2 a.m. You just wouldn't know it because there's so many people out hanging out and it just looked crazy. Yeah, it was a strange experience. I think it really started to sink in like days later once jet lag was gone and we could finally get a literal taste of India by eating the food and everything.
Yeah.
It was great. We were flying high, I think, at that point. Just and it also just created this really interesting dynamic between the two of us because we had done very little traveling before we did this trip. Mm-hmm. And being in India together with a partner, nonetheless, it's challenging, but it was really fun to see him get really excited about something and then me get really excited about something and then just sharing that crazy excitement together, but then being tested by it as well. Like, okay, this is really intense or this is loud or this is too chaotic right now or why is everybody staring at us?
Or just finding a bathroom in Mumbai is not easy.
And you have to go to the bathroom a lot.
Yeah.
Because of the food you're eating, you know?
Yep.
Yeah.
I've heard that. It's like spicy vegetarian food.
Yeah, all the oils and stuff they use. Oh my gosh. Totally worth it. But
yeah. And so what were some of the biggest challenges when you guys first were in India? Because it's like it's a pretty intense place to go for your like first place to travel together.
Mm-hmm. I would say bathrooms. Finding bathrooms is really hard. Truly. Like it was
in
impossible.
Cities, it's hard.
Yeah.
When we woke up on let's see, after one day exploring the city, go to bed, wake up the next day. So our second morning, all of a sudden we had to leave the comforts of our warm, quiet room and go out into the madness. And I remember having to sit there right before I left the door, like psych myself up, like, okay, here we go, we're going out there. Because all of a sudden your personal space goes from like a pretty small room to you have no space. And to walking down the street, and we're in a suburb, walking through the street, and there's no path, there's no way to walk. You just walk through a mob of people, like, she doesn't just disappear.
Yeah.
Yeah, India is so intense that you need breaks from it. Like, come back and just watch a TV show and go to bed, or fly to Goa and lay on the beach for a couple weeks, or go in the mountains and just chill out.
Yeah.
It's so crowded and so loud. Smells and, yeah.
It's something that I've always, like we watched The Amazing Race for a while, and like there's a lot of places that we've been on there, especially in Asia. And when you haven't been and you're just watching, it looks cool, but then you're reminded of like, oh, they're running through this market, and you're like, oh, I know exactly how that smells, and like the taste that gets in your mouth from the air, and how like densely hot and humid it is.
Definitely.
It's
especially the fish section.
Oh yeah. Or, like the live chickens. Oof.
Yeah, that like weird fishy smell from all the markets is like permanently stuck in my brain. So how long did you spend in India?
We spent about 3 months.
Okay, and then what were the highlights from that time?
So many.
I think Varanasi,
Varanasi,
which is the oldest inhabited city on our planet. It's also a special city for, I know, Hindus, maybe other religions as well, but that's where they go to die. So I think it's 80 to 100 people every day are cremated right on the bank of the river there.
Oh, wow.
And you can just watch. So it's just one after another too. You can sit in a chair and watch people carry a body, burn it, toss it in the river. They all leave. New group comes in, another body, just on a cycle. And it's just a crazy, chaotic city, and it's extremely beautiful right on the Ganges River. And it was just earth-shattering the way that they view life and death. Where here it's this sad thing, it's really emotional. There, when they're burning their relatives, I thought it would feel emotional and sad as well, but it was strictly business. They were just doing it and being done with it and moving on. No sadness, no nothing.
That's really interesting.
Yeah, it rocked me just seeing how different cultures around the world view something that we all go through.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's interesting to hear about that, because it's like, it's interesting. I don't know how to put it into words, but it's like, it's almost like we do it wrong. I feel like it's wrong to say that, but it's like,
could be.
We avoid death. Like Western medicine keeps people alive so much longer than we were ever living before. And now it's like, there's so many people that are living these like really long lives, which is amazing on the one hand, but then on the other hand, it seems like this sort of avoidance of death, and people don't really talk about it. It doesn't really seem like a celebration in a lot of ways of living. It's like a mourning that they're gone.
Definitely.
That's such a great perspective. And I think, and that's what travel does, right? It just challenges your views on what you've grown up thinking is right or appropriate, which, yeah, India definitely challenges you on everything. So Varanasi was certainly a highlight. I also think spending time in the southern region on the southwest coast of the Indian state called Kerala, that was one of our favorite, I would say our favorite places. It was beautiful. The food was awesome. The people were great. It's the most educated state in India, and you could certainly tell that, not only by the people and the conversations, but truly just by like the architecture. And it's a little bit cleaner, cleaned up and tidy in some ways. Not many, but like it for sure.
Drastically.
Yeah.
And to give a comparison, a manual laborer in the north would make about 100 rupees a day, just a couple bucks. And in the south, they might make 1,000.
Oh, okay.
Just for unskilled manual labor.
So they make significantly more money down there.
Mm-hmm.
Significantly.
Yeah, you can just feel it.
And it's also very Christian, which was weird.
Yeah.
The state's motto is God's country or something like that. And I think it was the Portuguese. I don't remember who colonized it. I want to say the Portuguese colonized it, but that could be wrong.
Okay.
But there's churches everywhere.
That's interesting. I wouldn't have expected that.
Yeah, same in Goa, which a lot of people go to. Portuguese architecture, churches everywhere. Yeah, and they also eat beef in Kerala.
Oh.
Yeah, it's technically illegal because of the cows are viewed as holy.
Yeah.
But they do it, and a lot of people eat it.
Mm-hmm.
You should have to go to the right house that doesn't says it. But
do they serve it in restaurants then, or is it still like forbidden in what restaurants?
Like restaurants in quotations.
Yeah.
come eat your beef.
Yeah.
That's the other thing in India. The rules are very
flexible.
Very flexible. That's the right word.
Yeah.
Okay.
There's so many people, and there's a lot of suffering in India. So they do what they have to do to get by. You know, if they had our traffic laws, no one would go anywhere. So the traffic's similar to most of Asia. It's just a mob, a moving, living organism that travels through the streets. They need new rules there.
Well, I think the thing is they have like, as far as regulations go, India's like very, very heavily regulated, but just like way, way too far and it's like so corrupt that
Completely.
To get that, like really to get anything done, you have to break the rules and.
Right,
That's
you
a good
do.
point.
That's a great way to put it.
I have a friend who I met. She's from India, but she came over to the States. And even the process of getting like a visa to get out of India is like super corrupt. If you don't want to bribe people, it's going to become like a really big hassle for you. So it just seems like in any area you have to deal with these crazy rules.
And the culture is everyone tips or bribes everyone the whole time. I think it's called baksheesh, where if some guy carries your bag from the curb to your room, you pay him like 10 cents.
Yeah.
It's not a lot of money, but it's kind of expected that you give tiny little tips all the time.
Yeah. Yeah. We found that in, I guess, like Southeast Asia as well as South America. It's kind of like people help you, like they kind of expect to get something from it.
Mm-hmm.
Like you get to the point almost, or we did in South America, where it's like, don't touch my bag.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
I'm not helping you.
Right.
Yeah. I don't want to give another person money. It's a little bit
Yeah.
more than 10 cents that they expect in most places in South America too.
Definitely.
So what was happening on the yoga side as your trip started out? Were you guys teaching at all?
Let's see.
I actually taught my first class probably a month and a half into our trip to India.
10 days, babe.
Oh yeah, we flew to Goa right away. So yeah, right away. There was a little retreat happening in Goa, and one of the instructors didn't show up, and they asked me to sub and fill in. It was awesome. It was a really cool experience. So yeah, we had intentions of teaching everywhere we went. And it happened in some places and it didn't in others. We definitely practiced a lot. We had a lot of home practices. Because finding yoga on the road isn't quite as easy as one may think. Even in India, the birthplace of yoga, the Western world has completely changed what yoga is, right? More of a workout, more of an athletic type thing. So there's a lot of that there too, but it was harder to find the yoga that I was looking for initially.
That's fair.
And for teaching, to finish answering the question, teaching yoga is very challenging if you're only staying in a place for 3 to 5 days, which the first year of travel in Asia, that's pretty much what we did. We spent a month in Ubud and a couple weeks here and there, but it was mostly 3 to 5 day stops. So yeah, you can teach your people around you, you can teach at the hostel, go to the park or something, but to find a regular teaching gig, you need to stay a place much longer.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, definitely. I know we talked about this before where it's like you kind of have to choose if you want to be sort of like a nomadic yoga teacher. You kind of have to choose if you want to be traveling more or teaching yoga more, and kind of pick where you want to go from there.
For sure. And if you're traveling, you got to make money a different way. Utilize the technology, your website, etc. And you can make money that way too, and teach as a passion or as a way to get more clients, but then convert those yoga students into customers of another type.
Yeah, definitely. And so in terms of having your blog, were you guys like looking to make money at that point, or were you making money at that point, or was it more of just like, let's start writing and like keep our friends and family up to date, that sort of thing?
Yeah, really, the evolution of our blog was just that. Kind of started as a way to sort of keep in touch, but more so educate other travelers and traveling yogis on how to do just that, travel and practice yoga or teach yoga. And so during the beginning of our trip, we weren't making any income on our site. We had hopes and dreams of that. And so we were in our free time researching how, but we weren't all in. You know, I would say we were still just as excited about simply being able to have the luxury of traveling, you know, freely and openly as we could. And then towards the end of that year-long trip in Asia is when we started getting a little bit more serious about creating content and trying to make money from it. So it's really morphed into, you know, our full-time jobs now. And at the time we were thinking, well, we don't want to go back to corporate America. We need to make this work.
Yeah.
But we're still battling that thing in your head. Like, we're in this beautiful place. We might not ever be in Udaipur, India ever again. So let's enjoy that, you know?
So how did you find that balance between trying to like invest in writing and creating a business with actually like enjoying the places that you were?
That's the hardest part, and I don't think we did a good job of it, and I don't think anyone really truly can do a good job of it, because if you're building a real business, you have to have a little bit more consistency. You have to have a place with good Wi-Fi you can go to. You have to have scheduled times where you're not being a tourist in order to really build something. So I would say we were kind of like a roller coaster. We would get into a place, love it, travel like crazy for 2 weeks, and then realize, oh shoot, we didn't do what we were supposed to do. Then we go somewhere else, lock ourselves in our room for a few days. And it wasn't good for the relationship. It wasn't good for the business.
Yeah.
It was hard. So then it became kind of like, okay, this is 2 hours. We're both going to sit down, crush it, and then go have fun. Or we'd make breakfast, work, spend the second half of the day having fun. Things, you know, trying to figure out your routine.
Yeah.
And I think it was hard for us to understand and realize how much it takes to do this and make money at it. So, I mean, we're still learning that, right? We're still learning the balance it takes, the elements outside of just our computers that we need to support ourselves to stay inspired and motivated to work every day. And we're getting closer to that, you know, and I don't know that we'll ever find it, whatever it is, but it is just creating balance wherever you are and understanding what you need to stay focused and motivated.
Yeah. And it's also this, oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say, it's also like, if you have a business that's around traveling, you need to be like traveling and exploring so that you've got stuff to write about, to create content with. But then you've also got to have the time to like produce that content, which is kind of like the struggle of the balance.
Definitely. It's way easier to get more content, you know, experience more things to turn into content. The fact of turning your ideas and your life experiences into a digestible format that people relate to, that's the hard part.
That's an art.
Yeah.
Go do the research for the travel blog. That's way more fun.
Exactly.
It's cool though that you guys have continued to pursue it. And I mean, I love you guys' blog. You have so much good stuff on there.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course. And so after India, you stayed in Asia, but where did you go next?
I'll do a super fast rundown. 3 months in India, a month in Sri Lanka, a month in Nepal for the Annapurna circuit. Then we went to Thailand for a month with our families.
Cool.
Indonesia for 2 months.
Yeah, I'm going to need help.
Myanmar for a month. The Philippines for a month. Cambodia. Vietnam, a little bit different, and Japan for a week.
And 3 stopovers in Singapore.
Okay.
Yeah, and throughout that time, the Singapore
If you're in Asia,
layovers.
especially Southeast Asia, Singapore is a great hub. And we would get really cheap Air Asia flights. And we just go one way to Singapore, spend 2 nights there, then one way somewhere else.
Okay. That's cool.
Yeah, Singapore is expensive, but really cool to see for a few days at a time, I would say.
Yeah.
What I always think is funny about the path that we chose is we started in India, like the poorest country in the entire world, and ended in Japan.
Yeah.
Expensive countries in the whole world. You know, I mean, it was like 2 complete extremes. And so we show up in Japan. We had some friends who lived there, so we were able to stay with them. We show up in Japan, like sunburned from the beaches of Cambodia and like our worn out backpacker gear from traveling the last year, all my Lululemon stuff that I like wore every single day. And we just felt kind of dirty and grimy and worn out.
Yeah.
And it was winter in Japan. So
Yeah, so it was cold. And
I don't even know if I had sleeves. No, maybe I had a shirt with sleeves. So we had to go to the store and buy new clothes.
Yeah, it was funny.
Did you plan as you were going these places, or had that all been set right from the start where you wanted to go?
We just planned as we went.
India and Nepal were guaranteed, and then we bought a flight from Nepal to Bangkok. So we just planned our big hauls.
Our family was coming, so we needed to plan a little bit for that. And then that was right in the middle of our entire year. So we kind of knew, okay, we'll stay in this general area for that event. And then meeting up with our friends who were living in Thailand for the trek in Nepal. And then towards the end of the year, I think once we bought our flight home, which we bought it in September to fly home in December, we had to just plan for logistics and stuff.
Yeah. And in terms of like the actual planning, like how did you guys go about doing that?
I made a spreadsheet of all the countries we were potentially interested in, and I did a roughly $1 per day math. So I was like, okay, if we spend 3 months in India, it's going to be $3,000. If we spend blah, 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 blah. And just kind of looked at rough flights. So, okay, this geographically makes sense moving from west to east. Our budget allows for blank. So, okay, yeah, that looks about right.
Which is
not a lot.
This is so funny. I was about to say, we just talked to friends that we met along the road. And here he is sitting behind me on his computer, like figuring it all out. And I'm like, you went to Nepal next? Yeah.
Which, let me share a funny story about that.
That is so funny.
That is how it goes. So we'll be in a big city. This will illustrate our planning. We'll be in a big city, and we'll go out for the day. We'll go to this park. We'll go eat there. Just have a whole bunch of things. Then all of a sudden, it's like about dinner time, and we turn the corner, and all of a sudden, Anne goes, "Oh, look, there's our hostel." And I was like, yeah, I know. The whole day led up to this point. I've been guiding you around for the whole day. I'm just like, I just thought we magically appeared at our hotel at dinner time.
And to give you another little tidbit, I have zero sense of direction. Truly, I could be 50 feet from our front door and I wouldn't even know it.
Even in our own city.
Even in our own city.
That's so funny. Like, we've just magically come back here just in time for us to get dinner.
Which, you know what, now that we're saying this out loud, it's actually it draws a parallel to our business relationship as well with the Yoga Nomads. He's kind of the back end, like, business guy behind the scenes, where I feel my strong suit is maybe being more on the front lines of things, like talking to people and building relationships, and that's exactly how our life has gone.
Completely.
Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of interesting because it's something that I've thought about a lot and written about a little bit is, like, we definitely have, like, I'm more, like, planning, like, okay, we're going to stay at this hostel and I've got the directions to it, but then I'm not super great with directions either. So it's like, okay, let's get us to point A to point B. And it was something that we both traveled solo last year for a month separately, and
nice.
It's stuff that we had to work on, like when we didn't have each other to fall back on that.
Interesting.
Yeah. It's kind of interesting how you have these like strengths that you just like find when you travel together long term.
Yeah, definitely. for sure.
Have you guys found that you've tried to like switch it up at all to like work on the things that you're weaker at, or is it just like it works well how it is?
No, I mean, I think it works well how it is, and you don't really mind at the end when it's all said and done. You don't mind doing some of the logistics.
No, and I definitely did the vast majority of the logistical planning, the visas, the airport purchases.
Yeah,
all that was pretty much mine.
And it's kind of easier, I think, when it's on one person rather than two of you.
Yeah,
trying to do that. I mean, he would maybe give me a task. Okay, research this, the requirements here, and I'll get going on the process type thing.
Yeah.
We were all a team when it came to it, but yeah, I mean, some things were just better left in his court, and some things were just better left on me.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, you like focus on what you're kind of like naturally inclined or advantaged at,
and then you're
better
both
off.
happy.
Yeah, it's funny for us because I think the thing with us is like we have a bit different like time frames of how far we look into the future. So Amanda's like thinking about stuff that's happening in a month. And so when I was traveling by myself, I went to Central Europe. So I was in Prague, and I was like, oh, I really want to go to like Ljubljana, Slovenia. And I was like, I had a couple of nights booked, and then like tried to rebook my hostel, and it was like, they're full already because it was like the same night I was trying to book for. And then I'm like, okay, I got to get like somewhere else like for tomorrow, figure this out. So I had to actually like pull that back. But it was a good experience just to like be kind of forced to deal with these things that, because when you're like, we've been dating for a long time, so you can kind of come to rely on it and like forget that there's like someone who's doing all this planning in advance.
Totally.
For sure.
Your brain forgets that that's a critical part of life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Listening to his chirp is just like making me anxious, and I was like home safe in Canada. He's like, yeah, I showed up and there was like nothing open, and I was like, why did you show up with nothing booked? He's like, I don't know, I just thought I'd figure it out, and I was like, oh God. I can like book something from here for you if you want. He's like, I'm fine.
Yeah, it was good though. Yeah, I went to Český Krumlov in South Czech Republic, and I was there in the winter, and I was like, I'll just walk into a hostel. Like, I've never done that before. That'll be fun. And get to town, and since it's the off season, like it's just dead. And the hostels, like quite a few of them are actually closed. And the one I wanted to stay at, they didn't have check-in or a reception desk open. So if you didn't have a booking, you couldn't get there. So I was just like wandering around the city, and eventually found my way to like a quite nice like boutique hotel, and then negotiated with them because it was the middle of winter, and got a pretty sweet deal on a room. But it was
Good for you.
There you go.
it was a fun experience. Amanda would never be down for that.
Maybe. I don't know. Just a little bit more high stress than that.
Yeah. Anxiety ridden too.
Yeah, I'm like pretty okay with like go with the flow. I just like to arrive in a city and know that I've got somewhere to sleep.
Yeah, same here.
So when you guys came back to the States, had you already planned Central America? Was that on your minds, or how did that develop?
No. No. But within a month of being home in the dead of winter, we were already contemplating, where can we go next?
So did you come home thinking like, we're going back to Minnesota, like we're just going to be here for the foreseeable future, or was traveling the plan?
We bought a flight home for Christmas to see our families, and we were really sad to leave. Sad to leave Asia, sad to stop traveling. We're like, okay, we'll go home, we'll see our friends and family, check the finances, and leave again.
Mm-hmm.
Right? That was our mindset.
That's exactly it. Yeah. And then it wasn't, I think it was 6 weeks into our time at home that we bought our next one-way ticket to Central America. It might have been a month.
Yeah.
And then we'd be stoked to head out again. So, yeah.
And were your family and friends like, okay, cool, this is just like what they're going to do now? Or are they like, no, like don't leave again. Like we just got you back.
My mom was for sure like, don't leave again. I think most of the friends were like, oh, interesting. This wasn't just a one-time thing. Mm-hmm. How are you going to make this work? How are you making money? What are you going to do there?
Yeah, a lot more questions came up.
Yeah, actually.
Definitely, because they didn't understand it.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, they looked at our past year of like adventures around Asia, doing yoga and playing in the sun and doing these cool things and seeing these awesome I don't know, spots in the world. But yeah, when we said we were leaving again, I think that's when they're like, well, wait, how do you do that? What do you mean? Which just challenged us to really put thought into that. Okay, well, what is our message? How are we going to do this? Mm-hmm. What is our game plan? How do we go somewhere and actually find that balance and work and play, but travel a little bit slower?
Yeah. And so it was intentional to do a slower trip the second time around?
Mm-hmm. Definitely. Yes, very much so.
And that was a transition from, and it completely makes sense thinking about it. It was a one big thing we did for a year. You know, okay, we quit our jobs, we got to do this. And then we'll come back to real life. That's what most people probably thought. In quotations. We transitioned from a one big thing into turning this into our lifestyle. So, you know, reflecting on that year, we realized, okay, we don't want to travel as fast. We were kind of burnt out on moving fast, but we don't want to be stuck in Minnesota in the winter. We still want the excitement, you know, but we don't want the hassle. So that kind of transitions us into a form of slow travel, which is what I would say is our go forward right now, which would be renting an apartment for 1 to 6 months and staying there, building a community, having a good work routine. And we pair that with a work activity, building a business, and then also a physical and mental activity. So this last time was surfing and Spanish. And another yoga teacher training for Anne. So as long as we have, you know, those three things together, it feels like we're living a life, we're productive, we're making friends, and excited. Yeah, exactly.
Sense of purpose, exactly.
Instead of just coconuts on the beach, which is not a bad thing.
But after several days, you're like, okay, I'll still have the coconut on the beach, but I need to do something else too.
Yeah, like coconut has to be beside the laptop.
Totally.
Yeah, it's cool to hear that because it's something that we've definitely experienced. Like we did the travel after college, came back, did the real life thing, and we're like, what is this? Like, this is so miserable. We don't want to do this. And then traveled again into towards the end of our second big trip. It was like, we know that we want to have a lifestyle that's more like this, but moving around like every 3 days and not really having much purpose doesn't really, I don't know, it doesn't feel like productive. It doesn't feel like as fulfilling.
Yeah,
like,
you can really feel it. For us, it was like you could really feel that something was missing.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, we kind of put our efforts into learning Spanish, and that's when we're like, okay, we need to be doing something. Like, it's not like we're, you know, just like lazy people who don't want to like work hard. It's just like we don't want to work in cubicles 9 to 5 on somebody else's schedule.
Exactly.
100%.
Yeah, I would. Yeah.
That message needs to be broadcasted out. You know, there's a PR advocacy group for travelers.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting because sometimes I think that I was talking to somebody who was like, is there a benefit to travel? And I was like, well, I would strongly argue that there is. And then we got into it a little bit further, and he was like, well, you know, if you're just going out and partying every night and getting drunk and just like spending money to just see things and that sort of thing, like, you know, is there a benefit? And I was like, well, not all that's not all that travel is. Like, some people go and do that. They do like a party trip or whatever, but that's not necessarily what travel is. Like, that's not what travel is for us.
No, right.
And I thought it was it was the first time where somebody had really challenged me on like, is there a benefit to travel? And I feel so strongly towards the benefits that I've experienced personally. But, yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I definitely think it's like an environment that's conducive to personal growth, but just because it's an environment that's conducive to personal growth doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to happen for you.
Right.
It seems,
for sure.
It seems like for most people, like everyone we've ever met who's had this, like for us, like going on our second trip, we quit our jobs and we were like uncertain of it for a long time, had a lot of those doubts and anxieties, like, is this going to screw up our careers? Like, our whole lives going to be ruined? What if we never get a job again? What if I'm homeless? Those kind of thoughts. And we've talked to a lot of people who had similar thoughts when they, you know, got laid off and decided to go travel instead of look for a job, or quit to go for a job. But like not a single person we've ever talked to has been like, oh, that was a mistake, or oh, that didn't help me in like a really big way, or it completely changed my direction in life. Like, I realized that I was just acting to try to fit into this group of people I was around. But the thing I want to do has been the thing I always want to do, and I'm going to actually go do it now.
Completely. And I think more people pursuing what they really want, what they're meant to do here, what they love, inspires people around them to do the same. Kind of gives permission to the people around them. Like, okay, if he can do it, I can do it. You know, you can totally tell when someone's doing something that they're really fired up about. But fired up, anyone can tell. If you're just droning away, you know, you just kind of like,
Yeah, life's kind of just like meh.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like you're like as if you had like a fire burning inside you. You can tell when people are like alive and have that energy versus like the daily grind of doing something you don't want to do, like slowly extinguishes like the thing that makes you who you are.
Right. And then sometimes it can be lost forever, and that's a shame in my eyes.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
So looking forward, what's next for the Yoga Nomads and you guys?
Yeah.
Well, definitely lots of travel and excitement. But we're working on more of a focus for the Yoga Nomads and what we're offering our readers and our followers.
Yeah, so we're shifting from a travel yoga blog that helps people combine travel and yoga. I would say that would be a good way to define the Yoga Nomads up until recently. But now what we're doing is we're taking our previous business background and helping yoga teachers turn their passion into a profitable business and a sustainable business. Because what we're finding is so many yoga teachers we talk to, they kind of plateau at that 40K, 50K range. They're running around teaching 20 classes a week. They don't have access to their students. They're getting paid, you know, 20, 30, 40, 50 bucks a class. And they're burnt out and they're not living a comfortable lifestyle. So we want to take those people and provide business skills for them and show them some technology and make it easy for them to get over the hump financially so they don't get burnt out and quit. You know, it would be a tragedy if very good yoga teachers who impact tons of people's lives, it would be a tragedy for them to have to quit or scale back their work and get a real job because they can't do the things they want in life.
Yeah.
So, and we're doing that in two ways, consulting one-on-one. So kind of like weekly Skype calls or weekly in-person sessions where we help them build a business. And also at the same time, we're building an online course so people can just watch these training modules on their own time and implement the things that they want.
Very cool. I love that.
Yeah. And it fits us perfectly. We have a long business background. Now we have a combined maybe over 10 years of yoga practice. So we really understand the yoga teaching market. Anne's been teaching for a while. So yeah, it kind of feels like exactly what we were meant to do this whole time. We just took a 2-year detour.
Yeah, and it's that thing that combines like the whole like life journey you've been on with all the business stuff. Now you realize you can actually take the stuff you love from that and apply it somewhere else.
Completely.
Yeah, and I mean, having the yoga teacher background as well and entering the yoga world, I mean, we talked about this on MBO, but it's just like exactly what I felt when I became a yoga teacher. It was like, why are people killing themselves to make like basically no money doing something that they really love to do? And it seems like you could do it in a much more like feasible way.
Right.
For sure. We never ran this by you guys, but we would love to offer your readers a free strategy session, a free consulting session with us.
Cool.
If they're yoga teachers looking to improve their business.
Cool. Yeah.
So if you guys are listening, you can go to theyoganomads.com/WWP, World Wanderers Podcast.
Okay, cool. Yeah, we can put that link on the show notes as well.
Awesome.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Well,
thanks, guys.
A free 45-minute session. Anyone who heard the podcast, we'll identify, your current state, any problems you have. We'll help you with a plan to fix those things. And then at the end of the call, we can determine if it makes sense. We can work together in the future. If not, see you later. Nice to meet you.
Yeah. Potential future friend or travel buddy.
There you go.
And on the travel side of things, where are you guys heading abroad somewhere in the future?
You want to take that?
Our travel plans are unknown. We are remaining open to whatever comes our way. There's a big part of us that left our hearts in Asia. So, it would be wonderful to get back to Asia at some point. And it also just works in our budget. But at the same time, we're also at a point in our lives where big events are happening with our friends and family, whether it be retirement or marriage or babies amongst our friends. So it's nice to be close to home for those events, to be able to get home easily. So, we've toggled with going to Bali in October. We've toggled with maybe heading down to Colombia and South America, maybe going back to Costa Rica. We're completely open, but ideally we'll be leaving right around the time winter starts in Minnesota.
We're on the same page as you.
We'll be together, maybe in Mexico, Oaxaca Coast.
Yeah.
Our plan for the next is to continue with the slow travel. So wherever we go, we'll probably just rent an apartment for 6 months. That'll be our home base. And we can travel as much or as little as we want from that. But it's way cheaper, way more comfortable, way more productive. And we're more inspired if we're sitting like that.
Yeah. And it allows you to kind of get that community. That is one thing that is missing when you're going from place to place to place to place.
Exactly right.
Yeah, we really felt that in Costa Rica this time. So I think, all of these journeys, international journeys, have really taught us something along the way, and that's a big piece of it.
Yeah. I know we've got to let you guys go pretty soon, but what were some of the ways you built a community in Costa Rica as expats living in a new city?
Sure.
I think getting connected with the yoga studio was really where we built a lot of our community around. So we, had friends that attended classes. We made friends with the teachers and the founders of the yoga studio. In addition to the surf community, Brandon's really into surfing. So he was out there as many days a week as he possibly could be.
Cool.
And many people who come to the Southern Valley, Dominical in particular, go there for surf. And then there just happens to be, a world-class yoga studio there called Danyasa. So just getting connected with activities that we're really interested in just helps build a community around that of like-minded people.
Yeah, that's really cool to hear. It's something that I sort of experienced and then thought about for the future as well, because it's something that we find the longer we're gone, we come home and it's our friends and family kind of take us back in, but it's we're not really a part of that social circle anymore because we've missed so much stuff being gone. But then we've met so many cool people around the world, and it's we're developing a community of people that are everywhere around the world. And then it's we've talked about, where do we want to settle at some point, or where do we want to make a 3 to 6 month home in the future. And it's hard to pick somewhere because you meet people from everywhere. And so
completely agree with you.
But I feel it's kind of an evolving thing. It's definitely interesting to hear how you guys have built community.
For sure.
Amazing. Yeah. Well, we'll be respectful of your time and let you guys get going. So people can find you at theyoganomads.com.
Yep.
Anything else people should know before we let you go?
Social media is all the same. Pick your favorite channel. I would say Facebook and Instagram are the most active. If you're a yoga teacher and you want to improve your business, that's the focus of our content right now. We have a bunch of free stuff on our site. So go to our site, get some free stuff, and we'll
connect there.
Yeah.
Amazing. Thank you so much. It was awesome to talk to you guys.
Thanks, you guys.
We really hope that you enjoyed that episode of the podcast. If you like the podcast and you want to support us in creating more high-quality episodes, you can visit www.patreon.com/theworldwanders. A little goes a long way. And thanks in advance for your support.
Thanks again to this episode's sponsor, italki.com. If you're interested in learning a language, go to promos.italki.com/theworldwanderers and get your second lesson free. To find more information, relevant links, and photos talked about in this week's episode, check out theworldwanderers.com.
If you have a question, comment, or feedback, send us an email at info@theworldwanderers.com. Join our community on Facebook at The World Wanderers or on Twitter at WorldWanderers1. As always, thanks so much for listening.
Have a great day.
Bye.